Okay. Live for the glow in mankind's eyes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this morning's episode. I want to speak about something which I find is a very important theme in the life of the person. You see, a person, they could have many intentions in this life. They could want various things, but the motivation behind that only comes when there is real value. You will live for life when you suddenly see something can happen. It can move forth. It can open up. So out of the various intentions that the person has, what is it that makes him really live for something? And I find that various factors come into this. I want to say a little about the wallpaper I've kind of chosen for this talk. I found it on some website, and it's from this show called Shingeki no Kyojin. And it's this show, Attack on Titan, really has a very, it's like a human extinction scenario, and in this human extinction scenario there's the ultimate test of character and the ultimate test of where the value in reality lies. Now, I find that our species, it has reached a certain point. It has reached a point where it is in some sense constantly creating various stories for itself. For me, the world is not just a place where particles move in empty space. The world is where many stories also enter and open their eyes for the first time. Due to the luxuries of the modern era, human beings are no longer placed in situations where their nature gets so tested that it's as if like hope is the transformation of character. The eyes of the human being open. They start looking at the world. First, there is simply a presence of sight. After many years and various waves of data hitting the child, a personality comes into motion. This personality looks at the world and eventually defines itself by it. It sees some value there to work. And it's very interesting because I'll share with you this interesting thing that happened to René Descartes, this French philosopher, spoke about the mind and body's dualism, and also spoke about how like his René Descartes' approach to, in some sense, finding truth was in a way to a methodical doubt. He was doubting everything. He's like, let me see what cannot be doubted, and what he concluded cannot be doubted was the isolated thinking subject. Now, the isolated thinking subject, this was the conclusion. As if Rene Descartes, I don't know what the last thought in his mind before he passed away, but this thought arose in his lifetime. That in some sense, he realized he cannot doubt the doubter. He cannot doubt the presence of the attention, the isolated thinking subject. Now, years after Hegel comes in, Hegel, this German philosopher, is next level. Germany has incredible philosophers on language. So Hegel comes in some sense, gives a response to Descartes, even though Descartes is not alive, René Descartes is not alive, but Hegel gives a response. And his response is that he cannot even accept the isolated thinking subject, because before René Descartes kind of went on his kind of exploration of the metaphysical truth, or the idea, the true truth. And in some sense, Hegel is telling him he had language. So the fact that he thinks he's an isolated thinking subject, all his inquiry is in some sense projected in the realm of language. And language, there's a sociability to it. It's as if your mind cannot exist alone. It requires the intelligence of the space as well. If this world was completely empty, the mind would in some sense become chaotic. It would not become chaotic, it would have no friend. And so when you have no friend, what occurs? You move with the world unconsciously. anyways. So Hegel's response was, in some sense, you cannot be an isolated thinking subject. Because even the fact that you think you are an isolated subject and the way the language is kind of projected in your mind means that you cannot be alone when you have to acknowledge the many first. Something of the sort. Now, human beings, as they evolve, they take shape. Pretty much life is a movement of shapes. If you want to really simplify things, people are not doing anything based on it's as if everybody's walking in their own world, and then parts of their world are very similar to the world of others, and therefore there's a sort of communication and social activity occurs. But on some level, we are isolated into our inner realities. Our inner realities is in some sense where our imagination and memory reside. And this takes the whole metaphysical question in regards to what is here really as intelligence to another level. It takes it into the wonder of the structure and the inspiration for memory and in some sense imagination, as if the child opened its eyes and realized it had many memories and realized it could imagine the future, and it was like, why is this given to me? Why are all these here? So in some sense, it does imagination, does our memory and imagination codependent, or in some sense, is it that the mind has an ability to see the opposite of each memory? So imagine in one memory you did something good, your mind could also imagine and see like the opposite way of you behaving. That opposite way of you behaving is a dimension that exists in the mind. You see, Heraclitus said it is not the same, no man can step in the same river twice, and it is not the same man, and it is not the same river. He was saying that in some sense, this ancient Greek philosopher, in the sense that it's not physically, of course, it's the same river and it's the same man, but in regards to what is actually happening in regards to the conscious moment, the conscious moment is changing. So this is the chaotic thing. This is why I say the educational system is on thin ice, because we, on some sense, are on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We have began speaking. Do you know what that means? That means what we think our subjective realm is and the linguistic simulation is a beautiful illusion, so accepted by what is actually here that the illusion in some sense has integrated, as if the person took a wrench to fix the engine of their car, and then suddenly they forgot to put down the little wrench, and now they think the wrench is part of their arm. It has to do with what they have held and what that in some sense leads to in some sense. So the identification of attention with matter is being the person. So Mr. Within is kind of saying, I looked at this and I'm like, okay, if we think we are matter, the attention is bound. If we think we are immaterial, the attention has no bounds. So how does life function? And I was really pondering. There was a time in my life where I tried to find the one belief to rule them all. I wanted to see, in some sense, the ultimate meaning of phenomena, but it became eventually strange because I noticed that every moment I'm having a new picture upon the world, and it was as if like the world changed from something that was happening to me, which something I was drawing into my realms of acceptance. So when you, in some sense, there's only one way you can take off a mask, an ideological mask. There's only one way you can take it off. No one can take it off for you. The only thing that the external reality can do is change your circumstance. So a lot of people, when the circumstances change, they think it's suffering. They're like, oh my God, why world, why are you so changing all the time? And natural forces are kind of like fighting our species. Why? And it kind of like the answer to that question is in some sense, in many ancient stories, two come to my mind. One story is about this farmer who everybody in the town was kind of like, okay, this guy's uncommon, let's go pick on him. It's very interesting, but just like most people, when they look at a tree and they see an uncommon fruit, they pick it. Similarly, in society, many people pick on the uncommon. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Anyways, there's this farmer. He has a horse. His horse runs away. The people in the town come to him and they're like, yo, farmer. And the farmer's like, what up? And the people are like, farmer, your horse ran away. You have nothing to do anymore. Like your main asset ran away. You like pretty much you failed, bro. Something like that. And the farmer's like, sorry, they say, you're so unlucky, man. Your horse ran away. Oh my God, what are you gonna do? And the farmer looks at him and they say, you're unlucky. And he says, maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. The next day, something miraculous happens. The people go to check on the farmer again, and they see suddenly the horse has come back with three other horses. Now the farmer, instead of having three wild horses, the horse went out, made friends, and came back to the farm. You know. The people come to the farmer and they're like, "Oh my God, this farmer is the luckiest man on earth." And they're like, "Farmer, you're so lucky, oh my God." And the farmer looks at him and he's like, "Maybe, I don't know." The farmer's like, "None of my business, I don't know if I'm lucky or not. And so what happens is the next day, the son of the farmer is, in some sense, riding one of the horses and he falls down and breaks his leg. And the townspeople are there again, as they usually are, and they're like, "Oh my God, farmer, your son broke his leg. You're so unlucky." And the farmer was probably like, "Why the hell are you guys on my property?" No, no. The farmer looks at him and he's like, "I don't know, maybe, maybe." And his son's like, "Dad, I broke my leg. This is definitely a lack of luck." And, the father's like, "I don't know, son, maybe." Next day, what happens? A sort of kind of military personnel comes in town and they need recruits, they need soldiers for the war. So they take all the townspeople's sons and people who can fight, and they come to take this man's son, and they see his son has a broken leg, and they're like, "He can't do anything, he can't even walk," you know. And so that's it. They let go. And the people in the town come and they're like, "Oh my God, farmer, your son just didn't die, didn't go to a meaningless war right now." And so they're like, "Farmer, you're so lucky your son gets to stay alive." And the farmer's like, "I don't know, maybe." The farmer doesn't know anything. The farmer's just like bewildered, just like, "Okay, okay, horses came, nice. Okay, my son's leg broke. Okay, okay." Now, there's another story as well. And, just a second, guys. The other story has to do with the Zen master who was living in the city, and I don't know what happens one day. Like, it's the Zen master in this monastery, and their neighbors. There's a house that's there, like a neighboring house, and the neighboring house has a daughter, and the daughter goes to the marketplace and gets pregnant, and one day comes to the parents after the child is born, like a couple years, comes to the parents and says, Sorry, there's this the daughter of the neighbor to the monastery. I don't know if it was a monastery or not, some sort of, I guess, Zen dojo, I don't know. But anyways, how the story goes is this girl comes to her parents. She says she's pregnant, and the parents are like, "Who's the father? This is ridiculous." The parents are enraged, and so the girl who loves this guy and knows that the parents might kill the kill the guy who they find out who it is. The daughter says it was the neighboring place, and the neighboring place was like this Zen master was living in this sort of monastery kind of place. And right there, like the Zen master did it. And once the child is born and old enough to some degree, the parents take the child to the Zen master and they're like, "How dare you? How dare you?" And they leave the child there. The Zen master, in some sense, really has no choice. The parents are too convinced. So what happens is this Zen master raises this kid as the parents leave. And the Zen master is like on a liberated level, so for him, it's like what life brings is how life is happening. And he sees that the parents are so convinced that he's the one who's done it, that this child has no place to go. So he takes care of the child and he teaches the child the teachings of Zen, and the child becomes this very like 12-year-old, very peaceful, enlightened, realized kind of kid. And so what happens is suddenly the lady can't take it anymore, the girl who lied about her being pregnant, and she goes to her parents and she's like, "I lied, that's actually my son, and that Zen master had nothing to do with it, it was some guy from the market, Billy." And so the parents are like, "Oh my god, you have brought incredible levels of dishonor to our family." And the parents go to the Zen master and they bow in front of the Zen master and they apologize, and they're like, "Oh my god, we totally acted in ignorance, and we want the child back." And the Zen master looks at the child, and the child looks at the Zen master, and very simply the child continues. It's as if the child has understood the nature of the world prior to, in some sense, how the story has to go. You see, people are not just desiring things; they're desiring to be a certain character in a story. But the story our civilization has is not a good one. It's one that takes people into their own islands rather than realizing the importance of this science project, called humanity, called mankind. After 4 billion years, we're all now here, and what are people doing? There was a statistic. Even I can check it. There's there's a statistic I read online, and we should not be afraid to hear this statistic. I searched world suicide death stats 2018. And it says, according to Google, brought this up, according to estimates from the World Health Organization, who over 800,000 people die due to suicide every year. So this is a kind of intense situation, and when that happens, what that means is, in some sense, the value of life has become so valueless that the person doesn't value their manifest existence. You see, the unknown must treat as a space as where the intelligence expands, but also where the intelligent leaves. The unknown is like an entrance and exit, depending on which side of the mountain you're climbing, if you're climbing up or down. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that human beings, there is a sort of it's just natural, I think. I think it's just based on the evolutionary position we're in. We're constantly wondering what is the meaning to our existence. It's as if our minds evolved to a point where they could ask the question, so now they're endlessly asking the question. And so the question is, where is the true value of life? And the thing is that the answer to that doesn't have, it's a very complex situation because it's like a journey. So you won't know until the end. And if you choose to bring the end sooner, you still won't know. So regardless of the decision to use a bridge the wrong way, in some sense, the blessed state of mind must be found that the unknown has much to reveal, as if this world has much to show you before your eyes close. And so, if one person takes one moment of their life so seriously that that moment influences every moment of their life, it's as if sometimes you gotta, it's all about intensity management. It's about how much you want the story of the moment to influence your attention and how much you actually, what is here influences your attention. You know, I remember seeing this TED talk where this kind of, I believe, Filipino farmer, this Filipino farmer came on stage and pretty much said like he lived a life in the Philippines or something where he was simply a farmer. He would work a couple months and then for the rest of the year he had enough. And it was as if some sort of life where, as if like most of the year it was a free and liberating life. You were just free, not obligated to various cycles of action in regards to just the cogs of society being the laws that govern us. So in some sense, it's like when a person enters the city, they're entering a sort of, their attention needs to be complex in a different way. The concrete jungle, it's not like you got to look for animals. You got to look for the intensities of law and the intensities of rules, you know? So in various moments, there's different rules and how do I say it? Like I'm trying to get to a sort of point where as we acknowledge the various components to our moment of being, the objective component to it, the objective life, and then the subjective life seems to have a purpose in maintaining the body. The body seems to exist only for the subjective. So it's kind of like your mind is living for your body and your body is living for your mind. But because they're both living for one another, it's this endless cycle. And so how does one's in some sense, why was that sentence free your mind? Like why did Morpheus look at Neo and be like, free your mind, Neo? It's like, come on man, we're all gonna probably die if you know. I feel like Liam Neeson's character from Taken could have probably convinced Neo to also free his mind. I will find you. And I will kind of tell you the prophecy. The world is kept by many stories. How much these stories influence our attention and our life throughout the day. It has to do with the species' ability to study language and wield language as a technology properly. Many people don't understand the value of language. I'm telling you, many people don't know how to speak because for them, they are so judged by the eyes of others that they're so much paying attention to the eyes of others that they never wonder about their true eyes. You know, they called it self-realization, the real eyes of the self. You are a sort of moment of intelligence right now. And so where are the definitions to the meaning of the moment coming from? Like for example, if you go and climb a tree and you wonder about yourself, like you just wonder, okay, I just climbed a tree, what does that mean? You see, the mind has an ability to connect everything to everything else. The issue is that where the problem arises and where the answer arrives are the same moment. You see, that was the whole kind of hidden twist behind mysticism and all notions of spirituality, that the person's trying to find, in some sense, the soul of souls is trying to find the ultimate viewpoint and then realize the ultimate is not a point of view. It's not limited to the eyes. It is the presence of all phenomena. So your relationship after what happens after it, you move, you transcend the language threshold, and you don't have a relationship anymore with language in regards to having it impose meaning. You actually pay attention to life. So it's as if you right now you are thinking of yourself as an ideological entity, as an idea, as if there's a sense of self here. Like right now, for example, I'm speaking to you. I'm saying I'm using the alias Mr.Within. Okay, so that's something. There is some sort of individualness provided. However, this individualness is just the tip of the iceberg, and in some sense, the roots of the tree of knowledge again are unseen because they are in a sort of soil that hides the greater dimensions from us. And so, what it is that if you kind of wonder about the human intelligence, you'll see in regards to its mind, there's exploration as the ultimate urge, and in regards to its body, it is exploration until when vitality of exploration goes away, it just becomes continuity. That means when the being is in like really challenged by life, they are left in a position where they have to decide how the attention moves. I will tell you, any person who wants to become healthy instantly, I'll tell you the secret. Pay attention to what is alive and move that way. I find true mystical self-inquiry must be approached like a lion and not approached like a hyena. A hyena eats whatever there is, but a lion has to eat what it kills. And in some sense, you have to trust what you experience rather than what you see, what remnants you get from other people's experiences. Now, this can only happen through a study of self. Only when yourself is more important to you in regards to its true nature rather than its artificial story. There was a time where I remember I got shocked. I read this quote online where it was like, when you're young, you think everybody's thinking about you, you know? And then when you get older, you know, you're thinking about, oh, sorry, when you're young, you're thinking about everyone else. Oh my God, I forget the quote. But pretty much the quote was, as you get older, you eventually see people's attentions are directed at themselves primarily and not at others. There's really few actual human beings in society. And some people are going to be like, what do you mean? Aren't we all human beings in society? And I'll be like, we are, but many people, their personality or how they are a person to themselves changes in accordance to the external conditions view. So what that means is the human being could be themselves, but as they go into a society environment that is forcing them into certain ways in order to be of a sort of accepted collective efficiency. So you see, it's one of those situations where you have to, for the first time, wonder about the world behind your eyes and how that world, in some sense, is stretched by your memories, filtered by your memories, and stretched by imagination. Just before I end off, I have to share this. There's been a sort of incredible philosophical inquiry into the idea of eternity. You see, the idea of eternity, the idea of the infinite, these have in some sense like the phoenix at night kind of seen in the sky. These sort of ideas. And so eternity, there's this question. The person asked, first of all, if I'm a temporary being, so that means life will lead to emptiness. But if I'm an eternal being, where would that lead? And the person would say, okay, it leads to fullness. And then we see the Buddhic mind, which says that you're incarnating endlessly. Now, this endless incarnation in Buddhist thought, it's kind of like, what is the meaning of an eternal being endlessly incarnating in temporary lifetimes? What is the point? As if when we look at the urge of evolution, we resolve it to, we kind of conclude it to survival, okay? So that means we are physically motivated to live on and survive and continue, okay? But if we were an eternal being, why does an eternal being need to survive? And so the issue with sometimes thinking everything is natural is that you believe the unnatural and as the natural. So the human condition is a strange one. And people's inner realities will shine forth. Right now the world is in a very interesting place. Soon there's going to be a sort of global arena, global community, this global audience, and from this global audience it's going to have, just like as if a mind has various thoughts, this global community in some sense. The inner lives of people will enter an arena where the outer lives of people are being considered. But the more this happens, the more there will be kind of like we are like this tribe, and whatever the findings are, like imagine in old school times, in our history where the first tribes were taking form. The tribe would stick together, and then one person would go find something. It's like apples for the first time, and we would bring apples to the tribe, and the tribe would be like, "Holy shit, this man's a genius! He found apples." Imagine like primitive, like spear and kind of bow kind of tribe. You know? And so what happens is the external explorer would go out and bring something to the external tribe. But the way it has happened now in 2019 is where the external explorer needs to go within, and in some sense, let me say it like this, the internal explorer needs to bring something back to the external tribe. So we begin to be influenced by another force of nature, which is in some sense the coagulation of our memories and visions. And so that means it's not just the forces of gravity and just nature acting on us, it is ourselves as a force in our lives acting upon us. And this was the kind of gift of evolution that we are now living in such a way, alive in such a way. So when you live for the glow of mankind's eyes, the glow in mankind's eyes, you're living for the future potential of your civilization, which you very well may never get a chance to see. So what I'm trying to say is that if our children in the future, imagine they opened their eyes in this world, and they looked at us now, let's say couple thousand years, and we are like right now the way we're living. Imagine we're like as we see people 1,000 years ago from 2019. They would look at us and they would be like, "Oh my God, our ancestors attempted to live 10,000 years ahead of their time, even though they were not 10,000 years ahead of their time." The thing is, this life echoes, and it's kind of like the greatest effort of the civilization will be this shout echoing in space. The human being in today's age has to be careful of two forces. And let me say not careful like as if you're in danger, but I'm saying like be mindful. Mindfulness means be alert. Now this alertness has to do with the presence of your attention, and you see where is the attention going throughout the day, and wherever the attention stays in the longest, it suddenly aligns towards it. It becomes what's the word I'm looking for, it adjusts to. So the thing is, if the attention is more on technology, your mind, your subconscious will be defined by the environment where your attention is in the longest. This is why the greatest minds travel. When you treat yourself like a journeyer, you have a totally different expectation of the day. You see, it's like Matsuyo Basho, this Japanese Zen master, says. He says, the journey itself is my home. The journey itself is my home. This moment was enough. For some reason, I felt like the name of EQ came to my mind. EQ is a Zen master, and my laptop has 12%, so I gotta quickly say this and end off. I'm just gonna read a couple of his quotes. EQ says, like vanishing dew, a passing apparition, or the sudden flash of lightning, already gone, thus should one regard oneself. EQ says, many paths lead from the foot of the mountain, but at the peak we all gaze at the single bright moon. EQ says, look at the cherry blossoms, their color and scent fall with them, are gone forever, yet mindless the spring comes again. EQ says, studying texts and stiff meditation can make you lose your original mind. A solitary tune by a fisherman, though, can be an invaluable treasure. Dusk rain on the river, the moon peeking in and out of the clouds, elegant beyond words, he chants his songs night after night. Let's just continue in this quote tunnel. Sometimes in these Mr.Within talks I do this. I just read a list of quotes from one person in history. Anyways, EQ says, that stone Buddha deserves all the... Oh my god, okay, let's pass this. EQ says, anyways, he says, sick of it, whatever it's called, sick of the names, I dedicate every pore to what's here. EQ says, it isn't that we're alone or not alone. Whose voice do you want? Mine? Yours? Having no destination, I am never lost. That's incredible. He says, having no destination, I am never lost. EQ says, I'd love to give you something, but what would help? EQ says, clouds very high, look. Not one word helped them get up there. EQ says, why is it all so beautiful, this fake dream, this craziness, why? EQ says, flowers are silence. No, it says flowers are silent. Silence is silent. The mind is a silent flower. The silent flower of the world opens. EQ says, even before trees rocked, I was nothing. When I'm dead, nowhere, I'll be nothing. Don't worry, please, please. How many times do I have to say it? There's no way not to be who you are and where. Okay, that's pretty intense. Anyways, guys, 5% battery life on my laptop. I'm going to end it here. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm probably I might do a part 2 to this. So thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and notice.